Hello, and welcome back to the COVID Long Haulers podcast, where we share real stories from people living with long COVID, what they faced, how they're coping, and surviving. My name is Emerson, and I'm joined today by my co host Jesse and by our guest Eddie.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
It's so great to have you back. This is our second full episode with Eddie. In our last episode, which we released last month in April, we heard about Eddie's life before illness and how dramatically things changed for them after developing long COVID in early 2022. Eddie shared what it's like living a life that is largely housebound with severe fatigue, PEM, POTS, MCAS, chronic pain, migraines, and sensory issues, as well as the added challenges of navigating long COVID as an immigrant in Quebec, Canada, without access to any real health care. A large focus of this episode were also the full-time French classes that Eddie was taking in hopes of being able to get a job in the future where they could work remotely from home most of the time. I highly recommend checking out this episode if you haven't yet, but you do not have to have listened to this episode to understand or be able to follow today's conversations. So, Eddie, how have you been doing since we last spoke?
Well, I think I'm doing better than I expected I would be. I remember when I was here last, I said that I was going to rest for like 2 straight months after
Yeah.
classes finished. I have rested a lot. I wouldn't say that I actually rested for 2 months straight or that like I rested as radically as I should have been. This time of year is kind of tough for me. It's always a really busy time of year because there's a lot of birthdays. So there's like a lot of things going on. It's also tax season. It's just like a really stressful time of year. So I haven't been resting as much as I wanted to, but I have been resting. I will say that the first week of finishing classes were really tough for me. Emerson remembers there was
Yep.
like a week where I could not move my legs and I was completely stuck in bed. I could try to move my legs, but they hurt so badly that I was like involuntarily yelping, moaning, and screaming in pain. And I had really bad bruising on the backs of my legs, specifically on the backs of my knees.
What on
Um,
earth? What?
Yeah.
yeah, I think that my body for months was just like hanging on. Let's get through
Yeah.
these classes. Let's get through this tough period. And as soon as I knew
The end
that
is in
it
sight.
was, yeah, that the end was in sight. It was like everything just
It's like, oh, we don't have to hold on as long.
yeah, everything just collapsed and y yeah, I
Yeah.
consistently, like, feel this pain in my calves, right, all the time, and it was like that times I don't wanna be exaggerative, like, times 10 maybe, I don't know, it was t
You can
it was
say
really
times
extreme.
100.
Times 1,000. Um,
Wild. Wow.
and yeah, it was really terrible. I did have a really big crash, but I did recover from it, and I think that that's likely got a lot to do with some different interventions that I've been trying.
What treatments have you been trying?
So, I started taking the tirzepatide injections. I actually started in late January, so I started right around when we were recording the episode. It's actually a dual GLP and GLP-1 agonist, so it works
Okay.
on two different receptors. I started with a microdose. There are some people who have been trying the tirzepatide microdose to treat the symptoms of their ME, like
Mhm.
PEM, and to treat their MCAS. And I think fibromyalgia as well. There's a couple other chronic illnesses that are sort of closely related to ME, MCAS, and other like long COVID symptom cluster
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, this was something that they covered in the Recover workshops. Dr. David Kaufman of the Center for Complex Diseases talks about GLP receptor agonists. And he found it really, really promising for symptoms of long COVID. He said it's rare not to get a response. Symptoms respond very quickly, 2 weeks in his experience to give the dose a full effect. Generalized pain starts to improve in 2 to 4 weeks, along with MCAS symptoms. Inflammatory symptoms like neurological, cognitive, psychiatric, and autonomic improve rapidly. He said it can aggravate motility problems, so just something to be aware of. He said they're rare side effects, like microdosing really helps not to get those really strong ones, but it might be fatigue, dizziness, nausea, dehydration. His experience is based on over 350 patients treated with microdosing, and 60 to 90% of patients responded with a decrease in fatigue, brain fog, pain, MCAS symptoms, and they saw improvements in days to weeks.
There's a great Health Rising article as well that has a couple different case studies and breaks down the types of symptom relief that people are experiencing. Some people report that even just a few days after starting a
Yeah.
microdose, so the microdose for this starts at 0.25 milligrams weekly, which is a tenth of the normal starting dose if you're using it for diabetes. So that's really, really small. And normally, if you're using these drugs for diabetes or for weight loss, it takes weeks to see any type of improvement in those symptoms or for those uses. But people who have chronic fatigue, who have joint pain, they're saying they're getting relief from those things sometimes within days of taking the first microdose, which is incredible and suggests that it's not the weight loss because some
Mhm,
doctors
right.
think or some people assume the weight loss is what's making people feel better, making people feel less fatigued, giving people more energy. But it's not that at all because this is starting
So
much
low.
sooner, much lower dose, much sooner than people are seeing any sort of like weight loss effect.
Yeah, this is super interesting. I think I remember reading that the effects of GLP-1 inhibitors for long COVID are mostly attributed to their potent anti-inflammatory effects. And as we know, chronic inflammation is believed to be one of the main drivers in symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, pain, all of these kinds of things in long COVID. So obviously managing that would help with a lot of the symptoms that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Tirzepatide specifically is a dual GLP-1 and GIP receptor agonist, as you mentioned, Eddie, and it is thought to reduce neuroinflammation, improve endothelial dysfunction, and alleviate hyperglycemia, which are all potential drivers of long COVID.
We'll have to fact check this, but I think that I was reading there's also GLP-1 receptors on mast cells.
Yeah, I remember reading that too, actually. And yeah, they are present on mast cells. So GLP-1 receptor agonists like tirzepatide or semaglutide, is that how you pronounce it? Could potentially act as mast cell stabilizers and reduce degranulation and inflammation. Early studies suggest that activating these receptors can calm overactive mast cells. A recent retrospective case series published in the American Journal of the Medical Sciences found that 89% of patients with MCAS treated with at least one GLP-1 receptor agonist experienced clinical benefits. It's really impressive. Just for those who aren't aware, mast cells are a type of white blood cell and an important part of the immune system. They're found in most tissues throughout the body, especially those that interact with the outside world. So, when a mast cell is activated by a trigger, it releases inflammatory mediators, including cytokines, coagulation factors, chemokines, and most commonly, histamine, which can lead to various symptoms. So, mast cell diseases occur when these cells don't behave normally and release mediators inappropriately or excessively, which can cause a wide range of symptoms that span the entire body. Recent studies suggest that many people with long COVID report symptoms similar to those seen in MCAS. MCAS stands for mast cell activation syndrome. People with MCAS have overactive mast cells that release mediators even when there isn't a threat, such as an allergen or bacteria. One study compared 136 long COVID patients with both healthy controls and people diagnosed with MCAS. It found that the frequency and severity of mast cell activation symptoms in long COVID patients were almost identical to those patients with untreated MCAS. Another paper investigating immunological dysfunction in long COVID found evidence of mast cell activation. So, yeah, it seems like MCAS or just general mast cell activation is a large part of long COVID.
Right. There's something going on with the MCAS. I'm actually going to be getting genetic testing to see if I have a particular type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I think that I have issues with my connective tissue already. But the thing about MCAS is that it can mimic, trigger, or worsen symptoms of connective tissue disorders.
Yeah.
Taking the tirzepatide, the first symptom relief that I noticed was actually a reduction in my irritability, which I attribute to possibly helping with neuroinflammation. I would get super disproportionately frustrated or angry, beat myself up over it. I immediately noticed that that almost completely went away just a couple of days after taking the first dose. My calf pain actually got a lot better. That was one of the other things that I
Whoa,
noticed because
that's
as I've
amazing.
said, yeah, it's crazy because I've had that consistently. I
Yeah.
like always my calves hurt. And so it was interesting to me that the calf pain went away. So that was really positive. But other than that, I didn't really notice any other changes in my body for a couple weeks. So I slowly started titrating up. I'm using the click pen. I don't
Mhm.
have vials. So I have to titrate up by like using clicks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not with a syringe. Yeah. So the amount that I titrated up was tied to, you know, the clicks in the pen. Like I didn't have full
Yeah.
control over how much to go up each time. So every couple of weeks I would just go up one more click. And then I think it was maybe 6 weeks in, I was realizing I was feeling bad towards the end of the week, like as the medication was wearing off. The FDA recommendation is to dose once a week, you know, every 7 days. But that was actually a pragmatic ruling by the FDA because they thought that having a floating day would be too difficult for people to remember. Like if you have to dose every 5 days, which is the actual half life of the medication, that's
Mhm.
difficult to remember. Oh, I have to
Yeah.
take an injection Thursday, I have to take an injection, then it's, you know,
Right.
Mhm.
Tuesday the next week, whatever.
Patient
So
compliance is important. Yeah.
it is important. So I've been splitting the dose and doing it every 3.5 days, a half dose
Interesting.
to get ahead of the half life. I feel
Wow.
like it's a more consistent
Yeah.
administration or a more consistent level in my body.
Yeah.
Um, After I did that, I started noticing a lot of improvements. And at the time that I switched to the split dosing, I also titrated up by a lot because you can't split 3 clicks in half. So I went
Yeah.
up to 4 clicks. So
Oh.
2 clicks twice a week. I went from doing the 0.25 weekly. And then when I started dosing twice a week, I just kind of jumped up to 0.33 milligrams weekly. And then I kind of decided to go up a bit more. I was impatient and I increased the titration. I was reading that some other people were experiencing more symptom relief around the zero point 0.9 milligrams a week mark. So I started titrating up a little bit more again. And
Mhm.
that's what I'm currently at right now. I'm currently taking 0.42 milligrams twice a week for a total of 0.84 milligrams weekly. I had gone up one more time to zero point 0.5 milligrams twice a week. But I started noticing that some of the things that it had been helping me with previously, like reducing my joint pain, giving me more stability in my joints, um, even reducing the severity of my PEM and the duration of my PEM, I started to see negative side effects in those areas. So I went back down and I'm going to stay at the previous dose for the foreseeable future. I will say it hasn't given me energy, but it's reducing a lot of my pain, a lot of the joint instability. And like I said, it's been positively affecting my PEM episodes. I did have some side effects like constipation and some bloating for the first couple of weeks, but it was pretty mild. Something I had to be aware of and to look out for in myself was that I'm going to talk about myself like a cat for a second. I'm like way less water seeking than I used to be. But I still get just as easily dehydrated. But I don't feel the urge to drink water like I did before. I've had to be really mindful about staying hydrated in a way that I didn't have to be before because I was always feeling thirsty. I don't feel thirsty anymore, not really. And I don't feel the need to eat throughout the day like I used to. I was always constantly hungry and constantly wanting to snack on stuff. And I don't feel that way anymore. I've been able to intermittent fast since then, which I'm doing to try and help reset my circadian rhythm. I have noticed that I have lost some weight. It is not like a substantial amount of weight, but I have lost some weight. Um, So I've been keeping an eye on that because I don't want to lose too much weight. It's not something that I'm seeking from this drug, even though I don't feel like I need to eat all the time. I've been trying to keep up with my calories so my body has energy to work with. um, but that's what I've noticed from the tirzepatide.
Yeah.
So something else that I started around the same time was nicotine patches. I started with 3.5 milligrams a day, the slow release, and that didn't really do much for me. So I bumped up to the 7 milligrams, and I started doing the protocol that people talk about, which is
Yeah.
taking it for about 10 days and then going off of it for about 3 days. And I did that twice, and I noticed some persistent benefits from that. I noticed benefits while I was on it, in that I feel like my brain fog improved a bit, that I was able to concentrate better. Like I was able to start listening to music again and to read a little bit, which I haven't been able to do for a really, really long time. For years, I haven't been able to read. And I used to be an avid reader. And, nicotine is a stimulant, and I do feel like that gave me some energy. But you have to be careful with that because, if you feel like you have kind of borrowed energy from a stimulant, it's really easy to overdo things and to put yourself in a PEM crash. So for me, I feel like the combination of the tirzepatide, which has been helping with my PEM crashes, and the nicotine patch, which makes me feel like I have a little bit more energy to get through my day, has been a good combination. I don't think that doing the nicotine patches without the tirzepatide would have been good for me. I think it would have put me in a boom bust cycle again.
The nicotine patches are a really interesting intervention that we have previously discussed on the podcast with Noah in episode 13, and I also think with Stefan in episode 10. For those of you who haven't listened to these episodes, and it's also been a while, there is this theory that SARS-CoV-2, so the COVID virus, may disrupt cholinergic signaling by binding to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and that nicotine may displace the virus and restore cholinergic neuromodulation. The cholinergic system is a vital, widespread neurotransmitter network that regulates cognitive functions like memory or attention, as well as autonomic processes and also motor control. And these are all things that are quite disrupted in a lot of long COVID patients. Whether or not this theory is correct or true with everyone who has long COVID, as we know, long COVID is incredibly heterogeneous. Nicotine can help with other processes in the body. It is, of course, as Eddie mentioned, a stimulant, and it is also a vasoconstrictor. And this is probably especially relevant for those of us dealing with POTS, orthostatic intolerance, or orthostatic hypotension, or just general low blood pressure, because constricting our blood vessels will help with a lot of these issues.
Right. I think for about 3 weeks, I felt good even after stopping the nicotine patches for a couple weeks to see how I felt. And I did feel some persistent improvements, but then they tapered off around week 3, I want to say.
Okay.
Um, and so I actually just last week started doing the nicotine patches again. And I think I'll probably continue like that, using them intermittently, but not a continuous usage indefinitely. So
Yeah.
other than that, I've also been using the propranolol. I've been taking 20 milligrams in the morning because I feel like in the morning it's so bad that I need like an extra boost to help get me out of bed.
Yeah.
And then about every 5 hours after that, I take an extra 10 milligrams. It just depends on how long I'm going to be standing or walking around that day around the house, or, some days
Yeah.
I'm awake for longer than others, but generally I end up taking 40 milligrams a day throughout the day. And that helps treat the palpitations and the tachycardia from the POTS. This really improves my quality of life a lot, and it makes me more
Mm.
able to do things. Like I've been able to take some short walks outside the house, which
Amazing.
would have been impossible for me a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, without having a serious crash. So all those things have been really improving my quality of life.
I'm so happy to hear that you found some treatments that help you. You've also had some big life changes. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah,
Um,
so since we last talked, not only have I finished my French classes, but I actually, surprise, it came 9 months earlier than I thought it was going to. But I received my confirmation of my permanent residence here in Canada.
what does this
Well,
mean for you? That's so exciting.
now that I have the permanent residence card, I can start applying. I actually already applied this week for the social insurance, so the socialized medicine. So that will still take 3 months for them to process that and get back to me, and for me to
Yeah.
like, I have like a 3 month waiting period. But that's super exciting because, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
that's been a huge barrier to accessing care here for me, is not having the RAMQ is what it's called, the RAMQ number.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, it's a huge win. I'm really hoping. I'm sure that there's still going to be
Finally a
some.
win. Finally.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
worked so hard with so little for so long.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will still be barriers to accessing medical care, but this will make it a lot easier than it has been for me. And on top of having rights to the insurance, I also have rights to, like, if for some reason I need to move out on my own or something like that, I will have access to like the social solidarity benefits. Like I have rights to exist here as my own
Yeah.
person that don't
Yeah.
depend on cohabitating with the person I'm living with. I just feel a lot more secure knowing that I have a right to be here. I
Yeah.
have the right to these services. My friends who were trying to help me from my French classes, they helped me apply for the disability advocate. They helped
Mhm.
me apply for a disability patient advocate to help me organize my medical care. But because I didn't have the social insurance, they denied me. So I'm going to try and reapply for that now. So there's a lot of things that open up for me with having
Oh,
the permanent resident card. So I'm really happy about that. And other than that, I've just been trying to, as I recover from the courses and regain a little bit more energy in my battery, um,
mhm.
I'm trying to apply those gains more towards myself, like investing more in my hygiene. I've been trying to slowly add more steps to my skincare routine and trying to
It's
take better care of my
glowing.
hair.
It's
Thank
a
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Um, all those things have been stripped back to the absolute bare minimum over the past couple months. So I've just been trying to rebuild those habits so I can feel a little bit better in my body. I've also been trying to invest more in my hobbies. Like I started crocheting again. Um, I also really want to get into like pinhole photography. Like I've been thinking about
Ooh,
making little pinhole cameras to set
I
up
love
because it's
that.
thank you. It's something you can put around the house, you know what I mean, and get a long exposure or something. So it's kind of a
Yeah.
passive hobby. Um, and also investing more in my relationships, trying to be more present for my other friends who are chronically ill, spending more time together, deepening those relationships digitally, virtually.
Yeah.
um, because that's been very nourishing to me. There's something about having relationships with people who are also chronically ill because we're the only people who understand really what the other person's going through. I have decided that I'm going to keep at the low effort cooking that I've been doing for the past couple months. Bagged
Excellent.
salads,
Yeah.
sheet pan
Yeah,
dinner. I'm not going back. I'm gonna take the energy that I was putting into like cooking for someone else and distribute that into things that solely benefit me.
that's the right way to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Fantastic.
I love that
This
for
is
you.
the best update. My heart is so
Yeah.
full and happy for you, Eddie. Like I don't want to say that I know what your struggles have been, but I've watched and it's just such a amazing update and to have this huge milestone and so much open
Yes.
up to you and then just recovering parts of yourself that you didn't know when you'd get back is just so
Yeah.
lovely. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. It's
Thank you
such
for
a
sharing.
really because you've been struggling for so long, and it's just
Mhm.
I really hope that the access to medical care and the residence card and all of that will really just open doors and improve your life in hopefully more ways than you would expect.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? My theory is or my hypothesis, let's see if it can be proven. But I think that if I can keep investing in the things that make me feel good, I'll have more motivation to continue with the harder parts of this process as I, continue pursuing different types of testing,
Yeah.
and pursuing access to testing. But I've just been
Yes.
trying to feel better about being alive in this body. And if I can do that, then I'll have the power and the strength to keep fighting for it. So That's the goal.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Can I just say, Eddie, I feel like this is something that is so important to talk about. So much of like discourse around long COVID and chronic illness focuses on recovery, improvement, gaining capacity and function back. I think besides recovery and all of these things, it's just so important to find ways to be comfortable with our new life, be comfortable in our body, feel safe in our body as much as we can, and find joy regardless of the suffering. And it's just so important to have space for things that bring us joy, because otherwise it is just incredibly depressing and exhausting to have our entire life reduced to that disability. And in most cases, it already is, right? In a lot of cases, we don't have the energy to do much more. And the energy that we do have has to go into survival, eating, going to the bathroom, showering. So when we do have that spare capacity, I often feel like I want to invest it on something that I actually enjoy, something that actually makes me feel like myself.
It's a hard
Yeah.
thing to think about, like, oh, I want to improve the quality of my life, but what kind of life is this?
Yeah.
Can't even imagine like what would actually improve it is if I didn't feel terrible all the
Yeah.
time. And even though some of those steps might alleviate some of your suffering, you don't really know,
Yeah.
right? So,
This is a complete tangent, but I often feel like chronic illness is just choosing between a set of evils. You have to choose between the doctor appointment that could potentially help you, but you're most likely just going to be gaslit, or you could stay home and rest. And maybe if you're having a good day, you could use that time to do something that is actually fulfilling. And you always just have to choose between things, and often it's choosing between potential improvement, potential treatments, and doing something that makes you feel good now.
Yeah. It's about which evil we can bear, which set of
Yeah.
consequences we personally can bear, because that answer is going to be different for everybody. I feel really
Yeah.
fortunate and grateful that with some of these interventions I've been trying recently that I can even experience
mhm.
an increase in energy or an increase in baseline in order to
Yeah.
pursue things that make me feel happy, in order to make a choice between two evils, because
Yeah.
some people
Yeah.
can't
Some
even
people,
do that.
It's all
And
relative.
uh,
My experience now would make some normies be like, "Oh god, I never wanna live that way." But my experience now is so much better than my experience 2 years ago, and, like, I hope to get more, but it's all relative, and we get used to whatever our reality is, and we're so grateful for the 5% that we can get back.
yeah.
absolutely. Whilst our conversation with Eddie ended on a rather optimistic, positive, and hopeful note, sadly, in the time between recording and releasing this episode, Eddie's health has taken a serious downturn and they have been in a severe crash for the last couple of weeks. This is a painful reminder of how cruel and unpredictable long COVID can be, and that even when treatments help, any improvements can disappear overnight. Eddie, I genuinely hope that you will start to feel better soon. We'll be able to return back to baseline and continue to benefit from all of these treatments that you have been trialing. Thank you so, so much for taking the time and energy to speak with us twice and to share your story with us. At the end of every episode, we like to call out a charity or a fundraiser for donations. And as this month of May is both EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis awareness month, I wanted to call out two different charities. The first one is the Ehlers-Danlos Society. It is a global organization dedicated to advancing and accelerating research and education in EDS and hypermobility spectrum disorders. The second one is ME Action, and this one builds awareness and power to achieve effective and well funded research, treatment, care, and support for all people with ME/CFS. We would really appreciate it if those of you who can would donate to either or maybe both charities. As always, while our discussions offer medical related insights, this is not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare team with any of your medical concerns. If you'd like to connect with our community, you'll find a link to our Discord server in the show notes, along with our Substack and other socials. We aim to release episodes monthly, so please subscribe and stay tuned for future episodes. Until next time, this is the COVID Long Haulers podcast signing off. See you on the next one.